Jesus girl. Jesus girl. Hey, it's the diary of a Jesus girl. Let the wings of the Spirit of the Lord just a swirl. You are in it, but you know you're not a part of this world. And for the swine, you should never cast your pearl. Yes, it's just the diary of a Jesus girl. The diary of a Jesus girl. Welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real life issues of the committed Christian woman. This podcast will inspire you to love Jesus and impact lives like Jesus. And now it's time for your host, Crystal Day, award-winning author, speaker, and Christian coach.
So welcome to another episode of the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real life issues of a committed Christian woman and, of course, men, because we love to hear our men speak. So for this week, we are talking to a couple. I think this is our first couple together. Woo-hoo. So I'm so excited. Married couple, that is, right? So I'm so excited to have the Garths with us. You know, one of my very good friends, Jonathan Garth, and his beautiful wife, Kimberly. And they're stationed, they're living now in Trinidad. And we want to hear about their love story. We want to hear, about their fairly newlyweds. So we want to hear about the transition, right? We want to hear about just the wait. And I'm just looking forward to this conversation. And I know that you guys will be blessed. So welcome, Jonathan and Kimberly.
Hi, Crystal.
Welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast.
Yeah, man. So good to be here. We are grateful to be asked to be part of this. And it's just good to see you and talk with you,
Same here.
Hi, Crystal.
Hi, Kim. Say hi to the listeners. Thank you guys again for joining us today.
Hi, everyone.
I still have my Jamaican accent. It's an accident while ago. My gosh. Jamaican accent.
Yeah, so as you hear John, right? John is hilarious. He's always like, I'm sure this conversation is going to be very good. So normally we start our podcast talking a little bit about your conversion story. That's how we begin. That's the signature thing. Mm-hmm. But as we are going, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, and then tell us your conversion story. How did you come to Christ? Each person, I would love to hear each person individual. So Go first.
All right, I guess I'll go first. So my legal name is Jonathan Garth, right? Some know me as Vijon. That's the artist name I do. They say I do Christian rap, right? And so I describe myself first as a disciple of Christ. I don't know, I prefer that term. But if you want to say Christian, fine, totally fine. And I am husband of Kimberly, right? And apart from that, if you want to say in terms of work or the professional space, I am a graphic designer / motion graphic designer / video editor. But I'm now working with Campus Crusade for Christ on a full-time basis. That's pretty recent. I never saw that coming at all, really. But that's a whole story within itself. And apart from that, I like basketball. I like reading, even though my wife might dispute that a bit. I like YouTubing. I like many things. I mean, it doesn't take much for me to be satisfied, I think.
He likes learning.
I like learning, right? And I love the whole idea of creating something from nothing. So for those who have been following me on Facebook and Instagram, see my new hobby of planting my own food and farming. That's the latest thing. But again, it's just, creating something from nothing or small and just watching that process. So that is, I feel, how God kind of wired me. And how can I not say this? Well, I guess this could lead into the conversion story. I should go ahead with that, right? Right. how many hours you have? So I grew up, I basically born and grew in a church, born into a family where my father was already a minister. My mother, her father was a minister also. And my grandfather was like a column in the missionary church in Jamaica. Don't want to go into the whole history, but arguably responsible for a major revival on the western end of the island in the 60s, 70s. God used him mightily. And Crystal, my father and, all the offices he holds and stuff. And I say all that to say, I know church. I'm like, the definition of a church boy, in terms of growing up in a Christian household and stuff. And no, I give thanks that, I was exposed to the gospel from early. And within that kind of structure, you're kind of almost automatically protected from certain things in a way. But Christianity is not, let's say, like other faith systems where sometimes you're once you're born, you are actually that. Christianity is something that is really, you have to choose Christ. And I made a decision for the Lord from a pretty early age. I can't remember the exact age, but probably would have been like 7 years old or 8 years old. And I got baptized at 10 years old. And all of this was genuinely done. But at the same time, from a very early age, I always had a lot of questions. About life, about, different religions, and a lot of highly philosophical questions that a 7-year-old, 8-year-old probably shouldn't be asking at that time. But again, because I'm a PK, you're kind of almost forced to deal with these issues from early. And post my baptism, coming into early teen years, the teen years are identity struggles and, starting to want to have some level of, independence or independent thought. So me, I feel like as a PK, that whole identity crisis is magnified by 3 or 4 times, for the PK. So mix that with, there's that identity crisis. There's the whole thing of, you just wanting to be a normal kid and you can't be a normal kid because everybody watching you. Mix that also with, and not just going to be real, I know Crystal love being real, right? My dad at the time, his ministry was really busy and he's preaching all over the place. Essentially, I not really see my dad as much, you know what I'm saying? Love your daddy, I don't mean to, but I just talking it real. So mix up all of those things. I actually now turned away from the faith and I kind of almost, I don't like to say, but I kind of almost hatred for church and Christianity kind of developed in me. And I turned away from the faith. I didn't rebel in the sense of like going to parties, having sex with girls and that kind of thing. But my rebellion was more of a rebellion of silence. I stopped talking to my parents. Eventually, I stopped talking to people at church. And I said, I'm good. I get rolled my friends at school and eventually I get to leave this house and whatever. But then eventually you find out the people that you put your trust in, like friends at school, them disappoint you. And then it's like I start to observe things about life, like all that I was exposed to growing up in terms of at Sunday school and all the stuff that I would have heard, sermons. It's like they start to kind of just pop up in my face and like I kind of trying to see, I start to see it, happening in front of my face. And for example, there are some dudes that I grew up in my community, we end up all going to the same high school and they became like the popular kids at school and stuff. And I remember one time, I don't know if it was what the music called back in the day, I don't know if it was Fully Loaded or I don't know if Dream Weekend came in by that time. But anyways, then party for a whole week. And well, I never go to party. I still under strict, Christian also. But I basically, in a sense, watch them party for a whole week, and then the following week, the whole of them sick out for the whole week. And I was looking on and I said, that can't be it. That can't be real life. Even though I'm still in my rebellious state, but it's like it started to just show up in front of my face how fleeting the world is and how really, in the long run, not satisfying to the soul that it is. And long story short, on New Year's Eve, New Year's Eve 2000, giving away my age, right? New Year's Eve 2000, I decided that I was going to stay home. Now, in my household, you have to go watch night service. But at home, I'm not going to watch night service. And they kind of got vexed and thing. But in my mind, I knew I was at a place where I needed to sort out my spirituality and my life. And it kind of sounded away, but if I had gone to church that night, because it's like church had become nothing to me. Like I had to go to church because my parents said I had to go to church, but I would sit down in church and just, in my mind, be mocking what is going on. Even when my father preaching, it's like, I hear all of this already, Jesus there to me. Like it became nothing for me. So I'm saying that to say that I don't know if I went to church that night, if I would be talking to you right now, Christian. But basically what happened that night, I stayed home, I opened back my Bible, dust it off, and the Lord led me to some scriptures, particularly one, 1 John 2, verses 16 to 17, which talk about, it says, for all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. This is not of the Father, but of this world. The things of this world, basically saying the things of this world are fading away, but the man who does the will of God abides forever. And that really spoke to me, and I recommitted my life that night. And it was like a 180-degree turn, for me. A fire for the Lord came, a fire for the word, and get involved in church a whole heap more. And it was just, and my father, our relationship got restored, and it was just amazing. And to me, I said to this day that salvation is truly the greatest miracle. So that is my
Wow, thank you, Jonathan. I mean, you just preached a whole ceremony right there, right? Like, seriously, you just did. You said so many things in your own conversion story that, like, we can just go into so many things, but thank you for that. I know that, sometimes I know Jonathan, he's not trying to be malicious, he's very nervous probably about speaking. He's more rap, like you should go on his YouTube, go listen to his music. He'll more share his thoughts in music than to speak. But I appreciate you sharing that, Jonathan. So Kim, we love to hear about you now.
Yes, so my name is Kimberly Garth. I was formerly Kimberly Perrotte until last year. And
that's not Perrotte, it's Perrotte.
Yes, Perrotte. It's French. So I am a missionary with same Campus Crusade for Christ or crew. And I've been a missionary for 20 years. And to me, it has been an adventure, and I love what I do, and currently I am the Human Leadership Development and Human Resource Team Leader for the organization in Trinidad and Tobago. And I was single for quite a while, so I guess we will talk about that. And how I came to Christ. Well, I grew up in a Christian church, and I would hear about giving my life to Christ and my good works wouldn't save me. And eventually, at around age 11, I gave my life to Christ. But my life at that point in time didn't necessarily change and move upward in terms of growth. I was very carnal, up and down in my work with the Lord. Like every January, I start reading the Genesis again and stopping off at some point soon after, and then start back again every January. So this was my up and down experience until I got involved with Campus Crusade when I was a student at UWI St. Augustine. And through the Bible studies and discipleship and just people sharing their lives with me, that investment transformed my views about everything. My life changed during that time. I learned about what it really means to follow Christ. I learned the gaps that were in my theology. I learned how to live a victorious Christian life, sexual purity, about men, time management. I think discipleship is powerful and just changes lives, because the persons who invested in my life and the community, people were just real and enjoyed. Before, Christianity was very boring to me. But after I got involved, I realized, this thing is fun. This thing is fulfilling. There is a great commission that needs to be fulfilled. And that was a turning point for me when I was at UWI St. Augustine.
Thank you. So let's jump into the couple. First, I want to start with, how did you guys meet? Tell us a little bit about how did you meet, and what was that transition of meeting and then actually marriage. But then we'll come back and then we talk about the single aspect. But just give us an idea of your love story.
Okay, so while I was at UWI, I joined Campus Crusade for Christ as a student. Well, I attended the meetings. And it was, while I was at UWI, Campus Crusade for Christ was a real rock for me, because at that point, this was post my recommitment to Christ, a few years. And I had kind of made a decision with myself in terms of, I'm taking my walk with Christ seriously. And I had to almost choose between the friends that I would keep, and again, a community through Campus Crusade for Christ, right? I would have left university, but I still kept ties with the group. So whenever they had like a Christmas party or something like that, I might attend. On one particular December, I was actually, this is when I just started doing music now with some brethren of mine, Elijah, and there's another person, Andrew, who formed a group called NXG Music, and were invited to sing or rap, or whatever you want to call it, at the event. And that was 2011.
Yes.
Right? And by that time, Kimberly had come to Jamaica to do a 3-year or so stint.
Yes. So I was in Jamaica in 2007 for sabbatical. And when I left after, I think it was like 6 weeks, I felt that I should return to Jamaica to minister, to serve there. And so I returned in 2010, and John and I officially met in 2011 at a Christmas party that we held.
Yeah, that's that Campus Crusade held. So I would have met her that night. Again, we're in the same circle, so there are times when things would be happening and I would see her, or like she need a ride, I hear she's a missionary, so automatically, you want help. So a few times I would drop her home. And this is she cute and thing, and at one point I was trying to see where her head was at. I remember this clearly, but she don't really remember, right? And I was dropping her home one time, and I was trying to ask a question about relationships, and it was almost like she shut me down right away, right? Or switched the topic, and I was like, okay, so I guess. So to me, she just had up a Jesus wall, she focused on Jesus, and I should just leave that alone. Even though in hindsight now, she says that whenever she was attracted to a male back then or so, she was uncertain of how to deal with it, and would kind of, shut down in a sense.
Yes.
But anyways, so we would see each other from time to time. I was given further wrong information by somebody who told me that she had somebody back in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Which apparently was wrong information. So to me, in my mind, that kind of the seal of, okay, Kimberly is taken.
I would love to know who that is, but I'm a suspect.
Yeah, but even despite all of that, in me getting to know her or be around her, respect developed. I had a lot of respect for her in terms of how she carried herself, her stance on purity and all of that. And even after she left Jamaica, like from time to time, I would send her a message on Facebook, like once or twice a year, and we'd have like a decent conversation. Usually, I found it to be good. And that happened for a few years, you know, but it wasn't no heavy conversation, like regular conversation at all. And then in 2016, literally at the end of 2016, like December 30 or so, she sends me a message basically saying she wants me to look out for a friend of hers who is attending my church in Jamaica, Hope Gospel Assembly. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, and then once again, we're having that conversation, just, you know, catching up. But this time around, it's like we're mature and thing, and it's like we're talking a little bit more, and, you know, even running. Like, well, you know, one time I kind of like you and thing, but I don't know, it just sort of continued, and I guess I asked for a number in terms of WhatsApp. But even at that stage, it wasn't like I was preying that, you know, pursuing her, because to be honest, at that point, I had, well, like the month or two previously, there was somebody who had liked, and to cut a long story short, I kind of get buff, you know. So I said, yo, but I was happy that that situation sort out and that there was clarity, right? But mentally, just coming out of that, and then I was also in a zone where I worked out in my head. Now, we're doing a timeline here. This is now January 2017, right? I did a timeline in my head. I look at myself and my aspirations and my dreams and my finances. And I said to myself, I will not be ready to date or court anybody until the end of 2018. Now, basically, I said to myself, in 2 years' time, that's when I can consider to truly court somebody or date someone with the intent of marriage. That's what I said to myself. I was talking to Kimberly seriously by the March or April of 2017, right? But prior to that, I was in a conversation with a friend of mine, and the topic of relationships came up, and the person said, so Jonathan, are you praying about it? And I said, to be honest, no, you know. And the truth is that for a few years, I hadn't really been seriously praying about a partner and marriage. I think part of that was due to, I guess, disappointments. And it's like, I never want to build up myself to get disappointed again. So what I worked out in my head was that, you know, I know the principles from scripture, right? And I'll just go along with that. And if I spot that with my eyes, you know, I'll make an approach, and then, and also start to talk, and then I'll start to pray. But really and truly, it shouldn't be like that. We should be trusting God from the outset. And as much as I didn't want to, I said, yo, no, I need to pray about this. God wants to be involved in all of my life. And I started to pray. This is February 2017. And I said, all of a sudden, weird things start to happen in terms of, even like if there was somebody that was connected to to my heart in any way in terms of a female. I just see where God just started to deal with it and sort it out. And all this time, I still kind of talking to Kim just as a friend, right? But the Lord just started to deal with me in certain ways and almost in a sense, like just clear the way, just clear the pathway towards Kim. And long story short, it's almost like, I mean, I don't believe in Cupid still, but it's almost like God just shot me with this love for this woman. And I'm like, what is this, you know? But my mother always told me that when you know, you know, right? And it's like, that's what happened to me. It's like I just knew that Kimberly was the person to pursue at that point, you know? I kind of careful when I say that though, because sometimes people have this thing like, oh, there is this one person in life for you. And I'm not saying that God can't do that, you know? But that's a whole nother topic, whole nother biblical topic and thing. So yeah, that is how I guess I bring to the point of where we start to talk. I don't know if you want to hear Kimberly version or she okay with what I have said. So she says she's okay with what I've said. So yeah, that is where we started to date.
Oh, all right. So you guys, I want to talk. You have mentioned a little bit about your aspect of your singleness, you know, being rejected by a woman or, you know, wondering, okay, you know, what should I do? No, Kimberly, I want you to tell us on a female perspective about your singleness journey, because I know that you married at later 30s, right? Thereabout. So for like many people, they would be like by 25, if I'm not married, you know, 30, you know, like what was your process of waiting? What was that like for you? And just tell us a little bit about, I guess, any advice you would have given, you know, hindsight of where you're at now.
Well, my journey started when I was at university. I entered a relationship with a young man who was Christian as well. We were involved in the same organization. And that lasted for like 5 years, but it wasn't a very healthy relationship. And sometimes we think just because a person is Christian, that means it's just set in stone, things are all agreed, but we all have to work on our issues, and we're willing, when God gives us opportunities, to work on the issues that we have. Otherwise, when we end up with someone, it just messes things up. So it was difficult to end that relationship. And for me, it was pride too, because I felt that my first boyfriend will be my first husband. So I was committed. It doesn't matter what happened. I was not willing to let go. And I remember talking to a friend who was they knew it was very unhealthy because I was close to this couple. I'm still close to them. So I would share and, you know, and they would see the things that when you relationship were unhealthy. And I remember telling him, but you don't think God could change someone? And because I was so just very committed to this person, and for us getting married, we must get married. And eventually I came to the point of surrender. I thought that, you know, I just need to just be open to God. That if God doesn't want this, it needs to end. And after 5 years, I can't say all was bad. No, definitely. He is a good man. And it just has some very unhealthy aspects of it. So after 5 years, I surrendered it to God. And in a relatively short amount of time, it dismantled. We both agreed this cannot continue, and we ended the relationship. And I never regretted ending that relationship, to be honest. Even after 13 years of not being in any relationship, not once did I think that, oh, I should have made it work. He was like the best man. No. that was a time in history that sometimes I even forget, to be honest with you. And so throughout my other times, what I would regret is that I wasted my time, that 5 years. And to be honest, all the single ladies there, the best time to meet someone is really when you're younger, when you're in college, because the fact of the matter is there are more people who are single. There are more men who are single around that time. So I felt that for me, not seeing the warning signs, I'm not willing to surrender that relationship would have cost me meeting other eligible persons. And I remember one time I was discouraged about it from time to time, and then God gave me a word that he knew I was thinking this and that he had a plan for me. And that was like 2004. Actually, and I reconnected in 2017. So it was like a real long wait to see what God had spoken come to pass. But even if God had spoken that, I mean, through the years, at times I would doubt, okay, maybe I definitely will be single the rest of my life. And another turning point came for me when I had to surrender the idea of even getting married. It became, although I enjoyed being single and I enjoyed traveling the world, I enjoyed my ministry, discipling over 100 women, I was fulfilled in many, many ways, and I had very good friendships through one community. So in one aspect of my life, I was really good and fine. But from time to time, I would be discouraged about being single and not getting married and not necessarily having opportunity to have children. And so then, I think I was in Jamaica at that point in time serving. And that was, I think God used that time to bring about a lot of healing. And I came to the point of surrender. I said, Lord, this is not, I don't want this to be, my emotions to hinge so much on being married or not being married. I needed to just give it over to God. If I don't get married, God is sufficient. If I get married, God is sufficient. Praise the Lord. Whatever it is, I want to be happy. I want to be content. And when I surrendered that aspect, I began to be less desperate for marriage. And that gave me, my interactions with men became healthier. Instead of seeing men as possible husbands, it became more like, okay, these are possible friends. Let me work on being comfortable with men, enjoying their friendships, enjoying who I am, just enjoying life on the whole. And that aspect, that switch in my brain made me freer, made me, I guess, more attractive, I'm guessing, because I wasn't desperate. I didn't see men as targets. And I learned lots of things during that time, which I write in my blog. And so the journey has been rather interesting. But I would say to single women, when you're single, you just need to take advantage of that time and develop your walk with the Lord, serve others, face, I guess, the demons in your life. Like when you're in a relationship and it lasts long and it's disappointing, or you're in several, like for me, I had rejection issues. When John came into my life, you would think that I'd be so happy that I'd be like, oh yeah, wonderful. But I kept pushing him away over and over because I was afraid of being rejected again.
Trust me.
So from that one little relationship, a long relationship, it somehow sank deep into my psyche that I wasn't enough, or I can't keep someone interested in me. I'm not as attractive, I'm not attractive. I can't be pursued and continue to be pursued until marriage. So when John came along, every time we had a hint of it's not going to work, I would say, John, I find being single, if you need to leave, you can go ahead.
You don't have to, Just cut and dry. Just you know?
Until she got fed up. And then I realized, Kimberly, you need to grow up. You cannot be doing that to the man. He's a good man. And I think maybe 2018, then I decided to behave myself and move forward. If we're going to be together, let's be together and not be afraid that he would reject me. And it's strange because in the first relationship, we both agreed, that this should end. But somehow I saw it as rejection of myself, and he probably saw it as rejection of him too. So that's part of my story, and that's why I'm so passionate about helping single women in several areas. Like, this is the time to grow and blossom as a single woman. Help others. It's the time to just understand yourself, what you like, what you don't like, the kind of man, fix your theology about certain things. Because the fact of the matter, I know there are lots of blogs and ministries about single women being content, and that is good. But I think if we were to be real, most single Christian women actually want to get married. And we have to help them face two things. Being content with Christ, first and foremost, because even after you get married, you need to be content in Christ, because no man is as good as Jesus. And he cannot replace Jesus. And your fulfillment and your joy and your experience in marriage will play out. How you walk with the Lord will influence that. And the other part is that if people really want to get married, we need to teach people certain things, like how to look attractive. Well, it's not necessarily just attractively. A person has to, deep down in their own being, feel comfortable, feel attractive, feel valued. And then out of that, out of your own joy for living, your own joy for yourself, your own joy in the Lord, that will make you more attractive. So deep down, I think it starts with valuing yourself, and whatever that may mean. Because some people, I'm skinny, so my issues might be my weight. Oh gosh, I wish I could put on some weight. For another person, it might be, but it doesn't matter. Whether you're skinny, you're curvy, whatever it is, if you really value yourself, it will make you more attractive. And things like understanding men and admiring men, respecting men. Our culture degrades men continually. And if single women are to get married, they need to know what a man values. A man would value support, being a cheerleader, encouraging them.
Hallelujah.
Bigging them up. And in our culture, you don't want the man to get a swell head, or we might see things and we're just silent about it because we're just afraid of saying anything. Suppose he takes it the wrong way, suppose he thinks I like him and I'm desperate. No, but in fact, we need to be able to relate well with men and build them up. And I think that is very, very, very important for single women as they relate with men. Yes.
Oh wow. Kim, I like where you're coming from, because you are so right. We hear all the time, in our single season we must be contented, and we must just wait on the Lord, and we must work on ourselves. And one of the things I found very interesting in what you said when John came about, you still rejected him. No, to persons that be like, this girl is a Jesus girl, John pointed out, like, he admired you from afar for your dedication to Christ. But when this man came along, you still had your issues, and I'm sure you were working on issues. But when the time come, there were still some level of insecurities that were there. And what I appreciate with what you said was, okay, how can I learn to even appreciate men in my single state without feeling, desperate, without feeling all of that? And I honestly appreciate that you didn't just come and tell us to just sit down and wait on our husband, because in our podcast a few weeks ago, we had spoken to some single women that share that, even while we love Jesus, we still want to get married. And while we're waiting, we still want to get married. And it's sometimes very, very hard to do that wait. So I appreciate you sharing that. Also you added about the attraction, us being attractive, not physically alone, because sometimes it's all about how we look. But what about how we talk about other men, how we treat other men, how we treat our brothers in Christ? So I really appreciate that. So I want to ask, what if you look back on some of the expectations that you had for marriage, would you say that now that you're married, they have changed? Or, what has, are they the reality now? Any one of you can answer the expectations that you had before.
Well, that's a very big question. 'Cause even as I shared earlier, in terms of, the plans that I had in my head for my life and stuff, it kind of just, God just, mashed that up in a sense, So even from before marriage, that was being worked on with me. And I'm not sure, coming into this conversation, I was thinking to myself, our situation, a part of me was thinking, Kim and I's situation is a little bit unique because I came to Trinidad, was when come to the wife, right? And just some other things, which is not really the norm. So I was kind of wondering about it. So naturally, pre-Kim, I was already thinking that going into marriage, I'd be moving to a different country and all of that jazz. But at the same time, I recognize from listening to other couples and just, different examples that anything can happen in a marriage. Once a marriage starts, anything can happen. I have one friend, I'm not sure if I call his name, but he and his wife, they got married and immediately found out he had cancer, she had lupus, the kids come right away and it's one bag of things. So anything can happen in a marriage. It's just how do you react to it? Mm-hmm. How do you include God in the marriage to carry you through the changes? So for me, in a sense, my expectations of marriage generally, a lot of it has been different in that regard, in terms of me having to shift towards Trinidad. And I'm not sure if I get into the reasons, why all that happened, but it's what, God wanted. And to be honest, as much as, because for me, there has been some level of loss, in a sense. For example, yesterday was Father's Day, right? And I don't get to spend Father's Day with my father in the physical space. So in a way, there's a level of loss. But at the same time, I have seen so much growth within myself in the last year. It's almost ridiculous. It's like I'm a new person. People are shocked to see me planting and all these things and drilling and all these things that I never used to do before, right? And I'm sure you'll get to that later in the podcast in terms of, what marriage means and what all of that, But if I'm to pick out something that, and is the hot topic, and I'm not going to talk very specific, but in regards to, intimacy, sometimes, especially the going church, you kind of have a view towards intimacy, and I'm talking sexual, that is not really reality. And we kind of have a kind of Hollywood Disney mentality that, you get engaged and you have your wedding day and it's perfect, and then on the wedding night it's just going to be fireworks and everything just connect and just perfect, And the truth is, and it's not to take away from our experience in terms of what we had, because I still feel it was special, for what it was. But the reality is that part of life is something that grows over time, and no two persons are the same. So as much as you might think out there to the man them listening that you're a gallus or whatever, no two women are the same, and you will have to learn your partner and all of that. And I guess a bit of why I brought that up is because in church we don't really go into details about certain things, right? And for a lot of Christian couples, I think because they might not be reading enough, or not even reading. It's just that marriage couples or older couples, they don't really share as much about what happens coming into a marriage in that arena also. So a lot of Christian couples can actually suffer in silence in regards to that area. And it's not good. For me, I mean, the last year and a half of me being in Trinidad and Tobago, it's like I've been schooled in marriage, I've been to, well, as you heard, we with Campus Crusade for Christ, and an offshoot of Campus Crusade for Christ is Family Life Ministries. So I mean, my wife coming to marriage, now believe about marriage culture that they have is one of marriage is very important. So I've been to conferences, I've been to, the church we now attend, they recently had a seminar several weeks on marriage. There's something else that I'm missing, or there's a marriage Sunday school class that we're part of weekly. So, I know about marriage much more. And that's even within the context of me coming from, my parents have been married for many, many years, and I'm very grateful for that because, to be honest, because of that and seeing them in terms of, we never really get to my story in terms of my waiting process, but I know this is a podcast mainly for females, right? But because I saw that example, and I just kind of made a decision from early. My mind was made up that and I'm going to be real, keep it real, that I was going to keep myself until marriage. I kept it. Not to say that it wasn't hard, and there were times where it could have gone the other way. But I made up in my mind, along with, my regular, just loving God. I did that because I love God. It's not because I never want an STD or it's just because I go to church. It's because I love God. Anyways, I digress. So what I was saying is that for me, the last year and a half, I've gotten a lot of, if you want to say, unofficial or official discipleship when it comes to marriage, right? And there needs to be much more of that happening within the church and within the Jamaican church circle, because trust me, anything can happen when they get married, So, and I mean, counseling is good, but having that regular interaction with other couples and things, it really makes a difference.
Definitely.
Yeah,
my expectation, mine was different. Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead, and then I ask John the question.
Okay. Like, for me, when I think about my expectations, I see John alluded to some of the things that I have experienced while I was single. So I'm involved with Campus Crusade in a greater way than John, because I was on staff all these years, and we have these marriage conferences. Then I am around from early o'clock when I was a young woman. I have had married couples in my life who would be very real. Like my closest female friend and her husband, I spend like so much time by their house from their first year of marriage, and now they're married lots of years. So for me, I had people besides my own parents, because you think your parents, they are model and they're happy about that. But somehow when you're involved in the lives of other married couples, you learn different things and you see marriage in a whole different light. So when I would be at these people's houses and they just see quarrels, you see the confusion, you see how they reconcile and how they deal with things, and they're just discipling me in marriage and my other co-workers who have good marriages too. Not that I'm saying they don't have any arguments and disagreements. It's just that it is so open and this transparent, and they show me how a woman should behave, how a wife, the kind of mentality, the kind of struggles you might have sexually, the importance of sex, the importance of respecting men. I've learned so much from these people that I probably take it for granted that, and upon entering marriage, I think I was sober in my views, and things may come, but I don't feel that I'm so shocked and overwhelmed, because some of these couples, they came into marriage not knowing these things and they wish somebody had told them. So as a result, they have taught me and others what they would have wished others taught them. So I came into marriage with advantages because people were willing to share their lives with me and be vulnerable and transparent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank God for a very sanctified wife.
So, as I'd asked them, and but I wanted to know if, it was okay to mention that both of them actually got married as virgins, right? And that they got married later in their 30s. So people, like when I tell people that I know men that are virgin in late 30s, they're like, it's impossible. But John was my friend for many years, and he was. And it's not just a podcast for women, because I know that many people are listening. Men, a lot of men actually listen to podcasts. So this is why I'm trying to get more men to come on, because when I do the whole demographics, I see that there are a lot of men that are watching and listening to podcasts. Actually, about 40% of the podcast listeners are men, right? So I wanted John to kind of share. I want you to share as quickly as possible about your aspect, because one of the things when I met John, the first thing I asked him, why you single? Like John and I met at a singles event. I really am. I'm really very straight up, this. So I asked him, like when we became friends and we met at a singles event, ask him why. Like why a nice pastor son like you, handsome, went to one of the top schools in Jamaica, really a man that loves God, all of that. Why were you single? And go, and he's good. Okay, Kim, and he's very good looking, right? So I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about that, because people would say, oh, well, because him grew up in church, but obviously that cannot be the truth. So tell us a little bit about your weight, Jonathan, but then also, Kimberly, I wanted to point out the fact that, as you said, why aren't we, I think they try to protect single people for some reason when they talk about marriage. It's almost like, okay, when you come into marriage, that's the time you talk about marriage. And which is, I don't think is right, but I understand where you're coming from, because next thing you talk about marriage and it makes the woman more thirsty, So I understand why sometimes it seems like you shouldn't talk about it, but then you're right. Our culture is not like a married driven culture. Actually, the men are glorified for having more than one woman. The woman, is almost we're not a married driven culture. And then two, even in the church is almost like, married versus single. And I'm hoping that this podcast will be able to talk to some more married couples, because I personally desire to get married and I want to know what's expected. And that's what you and John answered a while ago, that you had a different perspective because of what you had seen and, other persons being involved in the marriage ministry. But John was like, even though his parents are married for many years, grew up in the church, there were still some expectations that, he wasn't quite prepared for. So, John, I want to thank you for that. I really want to thank you for that, because it really planted the seed of where I wanted this podcast to go, where we talk about marriage. We want to educate our young people about marriage. We want people to know that marriage is God's idea, and it's a beautiful thing, but of course it is another transition that we need to prepare for. So, Jonathan, just kind of share a little bit about your aspect of weight.
Well, when I got married, I was in my late 30s, just to clarify. But approaching
mid-30s. Mid-30s.
Yeah. The waiting process, again, my story is a bit of a little unique in a way, but it was still a wait. And I must say it's one of the hardest struggles to wait that long, if you want to say that. But as I said, after I recommitted my life to Christ, and given, I guess it's just a number of things, because I kind of grew a certain way where being in a relationship and sex and those things, grew up in a Christian household, was just like a no, right? And even to just think of like being in a relationship in high school, it's like my dad would sit me down and give me a lecture and go to what studies say, and what this, when you do this happened. So it wasn't really, I didn't like girls, but in terms of getting involved in a serious relationship in my teens, it wasn't like as high on my radar as for other persons. And then post-recommitment to Christ, and me just falling in love with Jesus on another level, I just made a decision within myself that, I keep it myself, right? Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't struggles along the way. Coming into my 20s, I started to talk to females more in terms of, with the idea of pursuing for a relationship and marriage. And in doing so and getting involved to a degree, I never went the full way, but you just kind of go along with what the dominant culture is in regards to kissing and stuff. And I mean, just to be transparent and just be real, because it is such an issue. No, like most of us, like most men nowadays, I mean, from in high school, I just remember, well, a friend of mine, he invited us over to his house, me and some others. And one of my, rich friend, come over to his house where, you can play games and whatever. And we got to his house and we go in his room and turn on the TV, and immediately there was pornography, right? And I hadn't really seen anything like that. I mean, another instance, a community next to where I live, we develop friendships, me and my friends in my community over the other community. And the same thing, we go over the yard and parents not home and just turn on TV and it's porn, right? And this is something that it happens. And if that happened in my time, how much more now, with the easy access. So being exposed to stuff like that, it's like you start to get curious and think, and then, you might find yourself in a zone where, you're doing stuff like you're not really supposed to. And I mean, I won't go into bag of details, but if somebody here listening to this podcast and, in terms of sexual immorality, and that's not just having sex with somebody outside of marriage, because Christ said, if you look with lust at a woman, you have committed adultery. I encourage you to not delve into that, and to immediately be honest with yourself if you're a Christian, and to get somebody to be accountable to, right? So So yeah, but overall, as I said, I kind of made up my mind, when it came to physical intimacy, that was something that I was going to hold for myself till marriage. I found that in my time of singleness, whenever I was focused on the word and just regular fellowship with the Lord and within also a community, those temptations were less, or I had less of a struggle per se. Again, a person really has to, I'm sorry to keep on saying it, but you have to you have to decide for yourself, that I love God and I'm not going to commit that sin. And I started saying that my story was a bit unique because during my 20s, I kind of suffered with some illnesses that had me out of commission for a number of years. So from about, when I said 24 to 28, I wasn't really like socializing as much. So if you want to say my timeline as to when I got married, supposed to get married, got pushed back in a sense. And that's a whole other story within myself, because at one point I thought that I was not going to be able to lead a normal life, not be able to get married and all of that. But God turned around that for me, and he's just writing an awesome story. Yeah. Anything else you want to ask?
All right, so we're about to wrap up the podcast, but as I want you guys to kind of just wrap up or probably answer the question in terms of just, what for you, what are some of the things that are just important to you as a couple, or since you have got married, what are some of the advice that you would give newly couples, or, just singles, like wherever you feel like the Lord is leading you right now to just share as the Lord lead, whether it be encouragement for singles, marriage tips, what you feel like, where God falls into all of this. Just share as the Lord has laid on your heart.
Well, I feel that, especially being married now, that marriage is an awesome thing. It can be a very beautiful thing. Marriage is, for me, if you ask me the meaning of marriage, it's basically to reflect God. Right? In Genesis, it said that God created man in his image and his likeness, male and female, he created them. And marriage really is supposed to reflect God. And I know that's sounding all biblical and theological and whatever, but in layman's term, for me, marriage, it's making you into somebody who is more Christ-like. I don't think there's any other relationship like it, to be honest. In regards to just, advice to persons, I mean, we've been talking a lot about waiting. When to use poetry now, it's nice for me to know that the garden that I'm entering has not been, plundered.
Oh gosh.
It's free of you get what I'm saying though, right? It's a blessing, right? And I know that keeping yourself from marriage is a good thing. You don't have to be dealing with possible past experiences in a mental space and comparing to others and stuff. And I don't say that to make people who have already done that to put it down. There is a blessing in waiting, and also the wedding day. The wedding day is just the first day. And you have to choose daily to love this person. Yet, and get prophecy about you're supposed to marry this person and feel like that is going to keep you. No, you have to work at this every day. You have to love this person every day. So that is my 2 cents. I mean, I think Kim said a lot of important things for, women to hear. Take heed.
And what about you, Kim? What would you share?
Oh God, there's so much to share, but I would just pass on like 2 pieces of advice that I got from friends. One was divorce is not an option because there'll be enough things for you to think about getting a divorce. That is just marriage. And so commitment is very important. As John alluded to the fact that sometimes people think that they feel led by God to marry a particular person. And when things happen, they might think, okay, they blame God or they think that maybe they didn't hear right from God. What made you lead you into that decision? It is a covenant, and God will make it beautiful if we allow it. And the second thing that I got is that after my friend was married for 1 year, he said, marriage is a true test of Christianity because you have to learn to forgive, be merciful, be gracious over and over and over until you die. So we just have to understand and go in soberly that marriage could make us more like Christ. And being single, relationships in your lives could also make you more like Christ. But I feel like with marriage, it shows you a lot more how selfish you are rather than being single. Because when you're single, you can just go home, even if you're in a relationship, you just go home and relax yourself. But when you actually share in a space and sharing life and sharing things, and you have to think about the other person, it shows you your true self and how depraved you are.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of compromise. I mean, just logically, it's like 2 24 hours coming together into 1 24 hours. So it's like you're trying to squeeze 48 hours into 24 hours. So automatically there has to be some level of compromise and sacrifice that happens.
Yeah. And now that I am married, I would tell single women, it's just a different season. I don't think now that I'm married, it's not better than being single.
Yeah.
Both has its pros and its cons. And you just need to, if you're single, just focus on the pros and enjoy yourself. And if you're married, don't wish that you're single again. Enjoy the pros. So you just have to be content in every season. I think Timothy, godliness with contentment is great gain. That's really serious.
Right. I wanted to stress that importance of God. We didn't really speak specifically too much. It's very important, your relationship with God individually and as a couple, and that you pray together and you spend time in devotions together. Very important.
Yes, so that's it.
Okay, so I want to thank John and Kimberly for sharing, but just before they go, I want them to kind of share how we can find them and stuff, but just to say some of the things that I've heard based on, both John and Kimberly today. We hear a lot about seasons. And in the podcast a few weeks ago, we heard, just about the fact from a friend of mine too, that says, she doesn't think that, marriage is more nicer than when she was single. It was just a different season. And it's very interesting that Kimberly would have said the same thing that Tashna had shared a few weeks ago, to say it's just different. So when we are not in a place where we want to go, we always feel like the grass is greener on the other at the other end, but it's just a different season. And one of the things that Jonathan pointed out, that when you get married, like no matter what expectations you have, all of us will have a unique journey, so it's all unique. It's all, learning to get to know yourself better, learning to get to know somebody, together. And I love what he said, it's 24 hour, which is supposed to be 48 hours now compressed, because the two become one in no one 24 hour. And that is just a powerful analogy of, what marriage should look like. And if you are a non-Christian that is listening, what you want to take is, one, I would always stress on this podcast, if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, then the truth is, no matter what you get in life, you will always need this, like you always have a fulfillment that lack. And there's always this deception that, I'll wait a little longer for giving myself to I need to enjoy myself a little more. I need to fix up my life. And there's really no perfect time to serve God that right now. It's always right now. So if you don't know Christ, but if, for example, you desire marriage and you're not a Christian, we're hoping that you will still learn some of the principles that we're, our guest over the past few months on the podcast sharing with you, to say that, that marriage is a blessing. It is something desirable. In our society, we are hoping that, we would one day get back to where, it's not just about, a relationship is just for fun. It's really, for what the intent of marriage and to create the family that God wants us to. And if you're a teen, a young teen, that is listening, we would also just share that I did not desire to be married when I was a teen. I don't remember, for many years desiring. Why? Because it was not something that I felt like I was good enough for, or it just never seemed very important. It was just one of those things, but what we're hoping that you will get is that marriage is God's thing. That's his design. And he is going around dating more than one people is really, it can be very detrimental to your adulthood. So we pray that you will be blessed by something that was shared. But before we go, John and Kim, just tell us how we can find you. John, he's an artist. You can go on YouTube to check out his videos. Kimberly has her blogs and stuff. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for me,
single Christian woman who have been waiting a while from my own experience.
Go ahead now.
Yeah, so I'm an artist, and if you look for Vijon Music, that's VIJON MUSIC. That's the handle on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can search and follow me, like, comment. If you don't like, I can't help you, but Vijon Music, that's my handle through the social media pages.
Mm-hmm. For me, it is petalsbloom.com. That's my written blog site. And I also launched a YouTube channel, Petals Bloom on Christian Relationships. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. Yes, where I focus a lot on single women, Christian women who have remained unmarried. Any single woman could benefit, but it's based on my own experience. And by the way, Crystal, I actually got married in my early 40s. Yes.
Okay, so thank you for. So we are about to wrap up, but then I remember Jonathan said something that I know our listeners, they probably are going to message and ask some questions like, why you never ask them this? But there's something that he said that I wanted to just go back to before we close. You said you moved from Jamaica to live with Kim in Trinidad, and I know for many Christian women, we are being taught that the woman must submit, the woman must follow the man, we must leave. What would you say would have made you transition to that aspect? And Kim, why you never tell me at 40? This conversation would have just gone different because a lot of women, meaning a lot of women.
Get me back on.
I probably should, because one of the things, because a lot of women, they really just think that, if you don't get married in 30, then that's it for me, but you got married late 40s, so
not late 40s.
Sorry, in the 40s. Sorry. So once you reach 35 in Jamaica, you feel like that's it for you.
The thing is, she look like 27.
She really does. No, she really does look like 27 for real. But John, if you can answer that, what would have prompted you?
All right. So what happened? And I can share, right? So Kim would have applied for a house many years ago with the government, and with about 4 to 5 months to go till the wedding day, all of a sudden it came through that she was getting this house. She got word that she getting this house. And a stipulation is that if you take a house, you have to live in the house. So you see the implication of that, right? So if you are in technical terms, that was one of the major reasons why there was the shift of me going to Trinidad. And again, we spoke about expectations. That wasn't. I'm there too in terms of the woman supposed to come to the man and stuff. But with all that has happened in the last year and a half, I see where God has done our work in us, in myself, because the truth is, in Jamaica, I'm really seen as Peter Garth's son, right? And most people know my father, right? And being here, at first it was a little weird for me because people just know me as Jonathan, right? It's not Peter Jr., it's not Pastor Garth's son. And I get to kind of carve my own story in a sense for the first time in my life, right? And people just see me as me, so that has been refreshing. Yes, there is the aspect of I miss my family and my friends and stuff, but there's a work that God has done where I feel like if I was still in Jamaica, to be honest, I'm not sure if that work that he has been doing in me would have happened.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
It's not to say that we might not come back to Jamaica.
Yeah, we probably would. You just have to be open to go with God, wherever He would have you do, live, and surrender life. That's important.
However, I must say there are issues that come with me coming to Trinidad, me coming to her, right? And I laid them out plainly before I came that this and this could possibly happen in terms of your expectations of me as a new husband. It might be a bit different because the reality is that as hard as I may try, a lot of the stuff here is new to me. I don't know where everything is and stuff. So there are a number of issues that came with making that move that came up. But again, I thank God for a very sanctified wife,
An amazing husband.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if Kim wanted to give any input towards that.
That's a whole different podcast.
So no, what I wanted, what I got though overall is just that you have to be willing to be submitted to the Lord in your leading. Exactly. So I think that's like to wrap up everything that you guys have spoken about. For me, what I'm taking away is just be open to what God is saying. Be open to where God is leading you. This mindset of, okay, my husband must be like that. Kimberly's older than Jonathan. So for like some of us would say, boy, if I'm not going to ever marry a man younger than I am, some men would be like,
opposite in this relationship.
A man would say, oh, I don't want a woman, the idea of me moving to another country, not happening, and that's it. But both of you were like, okay, wherever the Lord is leading, even though my flesh wants to say something else, I'm going to go with the peace of God, the direction of God, and walk in His will, however that looks. And I think that's basically what I've taken away from listening to your story. Even as something as small as you said, Jonathan, in the beginning, that for many years you were dating and just trying to pursue, and then you had to stop and say, but I don't know if I've even prayed about this. I'm not sure if I've even involved God in the picking as I ought to. Like, even from that stage, I can hear you almost surrendering to say, you know what, God, I'm going to be led by you. And just like that, God just do something different. And I think I'm hoping the listeners that's what you are going to take away today, that whether you're single or married, how can I be submitted to God to do what he wants me to do, and understand that he's a good God. He sees your desires. He's a good God. He's not going to give you, like, if you allow God to choose, then he will never give you something that is not the best for you.
God has given me such a special person. Kim is really an amazing, I don't even want to say wife, just human being. She really is mature, not just in age, but in her work. I really get a full package.
So thank you guys again. Thank you guys again. I was really blessed by this conversation. And if you're listening, remember, you can send questions to me, email us, Instagram, or whatever, and ask questions, and we'll answer on the podcast as we continue to just discuss the situations of the life of living this Christian life, whether you're a woman, a man, wherever. We just want to really just share the realities and just hope that it will point you to Christ in some way, shape, or form. So thank you again for the Garths sharing, and we will see you next week on the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. God bless you.
Diary of a Jesus Girl. Jesus Girl.